Welcome to this week's episode of Jason Stewart Photography. This week, I'm out in the San Bernardino National Forest, and as you can see, it is just an epic view behind me. We've got beautiful puffy clouds covering the mountains below, and then we've got a beautiful sunset about ready to raise above the mountains. And as we're out here taking photos, you can see I don't have a lot of options for composition in this location anyways, but nonetheless I think that I do have a nice composition. Let me tell you how I have this shot set up. As you can see, the sun is coming up over the mountain now.
With the sun coming up over the mountain, the main thing I want to make sure happens with this opportunity is that I capture all of the beautiful colors in the sky as nicely as I possibly can, and that I make sure the mountaintops and the horizon are in focus, as well as the clouds in the middle ground and even the tree and bushes that are in my foreground. The way I accomplish this is by using my go-to lens for landscape photography, which is a Canon EF 16 to 35 millimeter wide-angle lens. Using a wide-angle lens like this is ideal for landscape photography due to the fact that they have more depth of field at any given aperture setting, and it is super reliable in getting both your up-close foreground as well as your distant landscape and horizon in focus. I also have my aperture set to f/16, which will also help ensure that the entire scene is in focus. In addition to that, f/16 is widely considered the sweet spot for sharpness in landscape photography. I want to make sure the clouds are especially in focus, as they are truly what makes this particular sunrise so epic, and I'm really blessed and fortunate to be here this morning to capture this heavenly image. Next, as you can see, I am using the tree to the left as well as the bush to my right as framing devices. In the video here, they are covered in darkness, and that's where bracketing my photographs will come into play. And that's what I want to talk to you about now, is bracketing. What is bracketing? Bracketing is the general technique of taking several shots of the same subject using different exposure settings. And before I go on, I also want to mention, in order to bracket, you want to make sure that your camera is set on a tripod so that you're capturing identical images. But the reason that we do bracketing is to make sure that we've captured our image with the best exposure possible. Now, for most of you who are using a DSLR or mirrorless camera, you are probably allowing your camera's built-in light meter to determine your best exposure, which is always the best place to begin. However, light meters are designed to give you the best overall exposure in your image, which is great if everything in your image is at the same approximate value, but this is rarely the case, and this is why it's so important to bracket. The way we bracket a photograph is by taking a series of 3 to 7 photos with different exposure settings. If we're taking 3 photographs, we would first take one photograph that is underexposed. Next, we would take another photograph that is overexposed. And then finally, we would take a photograph that gives you the best natural exposure. And when you get home and you load your images onto your computer, you'll be able to see which one is your ideal exposure. However, this is not the only reason for bracketing your images. What typically takes place when we are trying to photograph a sunrise or a sunset is that we will be metering for the sky in order to get all of the rich colors. And when this happens, our foreground will end up being extremely underexposed, making it very dark and in some cases silhouetted. And if you are taking a picture of something in the foreground and metering for the correct exposure on a tree, a flower, a rock or lake, or any other subject, when you get the correct meter for your subject, it will actually cause your sky to be blown out, or in other words, very white and overexposed. And when this happens, it's impossible to recover the colors in the sky. Instead of having rich blue skies and oranges and pinks of a beautiful sunrise or sunset, we have a completely white sky that is blown out. And there's no chance to rescue an image like that. And so if our goal is to have both the foreground and the horizon exposed correctly so that we can capture the beautiful scene that we are actually looking at, we have to help our cameras out because it is not capable of doing this on its own. And this is where bracketing comes to the rescue for us. Bracketing will enable us to take the same image where we are metering for the foreground as well as the sky. For this particular composition that I'm working with today, the trees and bushes in the foreground, which are the elements that I'm using as framing devices, are going to require one setting to be properly exposed, and the clouds will require another setting, and then the sunrise and sky will need an additional setting in order to be properly exposed. Now, if I simply set my exposure to capture the foreground image, watch what happens. So here we see that the tree and bush in the foreground are now properly exposed. However, the sky is blown out and we are missing all of the beautiful colors from this morning's sunrise, and a majority of the clouds are also blown out in this image. This is why bracketing is so important, because we want to make sure that we capture the beautiful colors in the sunrise. But we also want to make sure that we capture the heavenly looking clouds as well. So on this first image, as I expose for the foreground, my camera settings are at 1/25th of a second. I have an aperture of f/16 and I'm using an ISO of 100. Let's look at the next picture where I do the exposure for the clouds. Now I've moved from 1/25th of a second to 1/30th of a second. I'm still at f/16 and ISO 100, but as you can see, the foreground is now getting darker and the clouds are now properly exposed, and even the horizon and the sunrise it has more color to it as well. However, I want to take a third photo, which is the final photo of this actual bracket, and now I'm going to go from my original 1/25th second, which will let in more light and give me a brighter reading on the foreground. I went from 1/25th of a second to 1/30th of a second, now to 1/50th of a second. And again, we're still at f/16 and we're still at ISO 100. And you can see now that the sunrise and sunset are beautifully captured. I've got all of the colors in there. And when I get this image home, I'm going to have a lot to work with to recreate what I'm seeing here in my camera.
Gosh, isn't that beautiful? Look at that. I'm going to take a few different shots to make sure I have the correct settings. This is what landscape photography is all about. Wow, look at that cloud coming up over. Oh, the light just hitting that cloud beautifully. I want you to see this. Look at the clouds. The lighting in the clouds is what I'm focused on right now, and it is just epic. Okay, what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna pull out my long lens and take a couple of shots with my telephoto with my 1 to 400 millimeter. Here comes the sun, so I'm not gonna do that with just yet. It's just beautiful. Here it comes. Oh, look at the light on this. Oh my gosh, this is just amazing. This is one of the most beautiful sunrises I've ever seen. It's truly epic and it's heavenly.
Thank you again for joining me in this week's episode. If you have found this content helpful, could you do me a huge favor and hit the like button along with the subscribe button? That just lets YouTube know you like this content and want to see more of it, and it really helped me out as well.
Hey, I'm gonna wrap things up right now, but before I do, I wanna show you some of the epic footage that I got this morning coming up. About an hour before sunrise as I was driving up this mountain. It was just amazing. The cloud formation, that I was just above the clouds, and the coloring during, it's really considered the blue hour. That first hour before the sun rises and when the sun sets is known as the blue hour, and I really got some beautiful images there that I'd like to show you now. Other than that, though, I am going to call this week a success.
Gonna stay in this moment, gonna lay here on the grass. I don't need to feel lonely. I will find the only
This has the making for a spectacular morning. I just can't believe the beauty I'm seeing down there right now, guys. And I'm so glad I'm here today, and I hope that this can just turn out to be an enormous blessing.
Of all the magic places in the world I've been to, this is where my heart is. Oh, you know it's true. No matter where I go, I'm coming home to you. Been walking down the street so many times, my feet know every brick and stone. Could wear a blindfold